Thomas Bennington stood in the doorway of the nursery, his tailored suit perfectly pressed, his dark hair beginning to show distinguished streaks of silver at the temples. He was 42 years old and had built his fortune from nothing, but right now, he felt utterly helpless. His son, little Matthew, just 18 months old, sat in his ornate high chair, pushing away yet another carefully prepared meal. The baby's cheeks were growing hollow, his eyes lacking their usual sparkle. "He won't eat anything, Mr. Bennington," said the newest nanny, the fourth one in 3 months. "I've tried everything the pediatrician suggested." Thomas ran his hand through his hair, a gesture that betrayed the worry he tried so hard to hide. His wife, Carolyn, had passed away 6 months ago. Cancer. It had been sudden, devastating. And ever since, little Matthew had been slowly fading, refusing most meals, crying through the nights. The doctors found nothing physically wrong. But Thomas knew his son was grieving in the only way an infant could. He missed his mother's presence, her warmth, her smell. Everything in their mansion was too sterile, too perfect, too empty. That's when Elena arrived. She came through an agency, not as a nanny, but as a housekeeper. Elena Ramirez was 58 years old, with warm brown eyes that crinkled at the corners when she smiled. Her hair, streaked with gray, was pulled back in a simple bun. She wore a modest blue dress with a white apron, and something about her immediately felt different. She had raised 4 children of her own on a seamstress's salary, put them all through school, and now they were scattered across the country, living their own lives. Her husband had passed 3 years ago, and she needed work to fill the quiet hours of her small apartment. On her first day, Elena was cleaning the kitchen when she heard Matthew crying upstairs. The sound pulled at something deep in her heart. Without thinking, she climbed the stairs and found the nanny desperately trying to coax the baby to eat some organic quinoa and vegetable puree. "May I?" Elena asked softly. The nanny, exhausted and grateful, stepped aside. Elena approached the baby slowly, humming a gentle tune her own mother had sung to her decades ago. Matthew's crying softened to whimpers. His dark eyes, so much like his father's, watched this new person with cautious curiosity. "Hello, little one," Elena said quietly, her voice carrying the warmth of someone who had soothed many tears. "You're missing your mama, aren't you?" She didn't try to feed him right away. Instead, she simply sat near him, continuing to hum, letting him grow comfortable with her presence. Thomas, having heard the change in his son's crying, came to the doorway. He watched silently as this stranger connected with his boy in a way no one else had managed. After 20 minutes, Elena spoke. "Mr. Bennington, if I may. Would you mind if I made him something from my kitchen? Just something simple." Thomas nodded, willing to try anything. Elena went downstairs and looked through the pristine kitchen with its imported ingredients and expensive appliances. Then she did something no one expected. She asked Thomas for $20 and walked to the small neighborhood market 6 blocks away, the kind of place the Benningtons never shopped. An hour later, she returned and began to cook. The aroma that filled the house was unlike anything that had come from that kitchen before. It wasn't fancy or exotic. It was the smell of comfort itself. Elena had made caldo de pollo, her grandmother's chicken soup. But not just any soup. She had simmered it slowly with carrots, potatoes, and a secret touch of love that came from decades of feeding hungry children. She had also made fresh corn tortillas by hand, the kind that filled a house with the scent of home. But the key was something simpler still. She had cooked plain white rice, soft and warm, the way her own babies had loved it, mixed with a tiny bit of butter and mashed vegetables. She brought a small bowl upstairs. Matthew was crying again, his face red and tear-streaked. Elena sat down beside his high chair. She didn't rush. She took a tiny bit of the rice mixture on a baby spoon and lifted it to her own mouth first, tasting it, showing it was good. Matthew watched. Then she offered him the tiniest taste, just a touch on his lips. He paused. His tongue reached out tentatively, and then something miraculous happened. His mouth opened for more. Elena fed him slowly, patiently, talking to him in soft Spanish between bites, telling him stories of her own children, of sunshine and laughter, of ordinary beautiful days. Matthew ate, not much, but more than he had eaten in weeks. Thomas stood in the doorway, his throat tight with emotion. He didn't understand all the Spanish words, but he understood their meaning. This woman was giving his son something money couldn't buy. She was giving him the feeling of being truly cared for. Over the following weeks, Elena continued to cook for Matthew. Simple foods made with patience and love. She held him while he ate, sang to him, treated him like her own grandchild rather than an employer's son. But more than that, she talked to Thomas. One evening, as Matthew finally slept peacefully, she found Thomas in his study, staring at spreadsheets without seeing them. "Mr. Bennington," she said gently, "may I speak plainly?" He nodded, welcoming the interruption. "Your son doesn't need perfect nutrition or expensive care," she said. "He needs to feel loved. He needs to know that life goes on, even with sadness. He needs ordinary moments that feel safe." Thomas looked at this woman who had come into his home as a housekeeper and become so much more. "How do I give him that?" he asked, his voice breaking slightly. "Everything I do feels wrong." Elena smiled with such kindness that Thomas felt tears sting his eyes. "You hold him, even when you don't know what to say. You sit on the floor and play with him, even when you're tired. You let him see you laugh again, even though your heart still hurts. You show him that life is still good, still worth living." She paused. "And maybe, Mr. Bennington, you need to remember that yourself." In the months that followed, the Bennington house changed. Elena taught Thomas to cook simple meals. They had dinner together, the three of them, at the kitchen table instead of the formal dining room. Matthew sat in his high chair, sometimes eating, sometimes playing, but always surrounded by warmth and laughter. Thomas learned to make pancakes on Saturday mornings. They were often lopsided and imperfect, and Matthew loved them. Elena brought her guitar one day and taught Matthew simple songs. The house filled with music again. Slowly, Matthew began to thrive. His cheeks grew round, his laughter returned, his eyes sparkled with life. And Thomas began to heal too. He learned that wealth couldn't solve every problem, that sometimes the most valuable things cost nothing at all. That presence mattered more than presents. That simple kindness could change everything. Years later, when Matthew was grown, he would still remember the warmth of Elena's kitchen, the taste of her simple food made with love, and the lesson that had shaped his life, that true richness isn't measured in money, but in the care we give to one another. And Thomas, looking back on those difficult days, would always be grateful for the poor maid who had given his family something priceless. She had given them their hearts back, one simple meal at a time.